Why am I no longer a presuppositionalist? I think the reason, or what has come to be codified really in my own mind, in terms of explaining to myself and to others why I am no longer a presuppositionalist, is the fact that presuppositionalism, I believe, requires a confusion, a mixture of what we might call ontology, which is, has as its object the world, the real world, being, we might say, and epistemology, on the other hand, which is our knowledge of the world. All right, and one of the ways in which this comes to a fore is in the fact that fundamental to presuppositionalism, one must presuppose the truth of the triune God or the truth of the Holy Scriptures. The problem with presupposing the truth of the triune God or the truth of the Scriptures is that it essentially makes not God the fundamental, because we don't have God literally in our minds, right? We have an idea of God in our minds, or we have an idea of the Scriptures in our minds, right? So like when I'm thinking about a house, or when I come to a knowledge of my own house is not imminently or materially in my own mind. It's there virtually. It's an idea, we might say. And so we want to be very careful about what we say we presuppose and what we try to presuppose in terms of our own knowledge and understanding. So, for example, if you say you presuppose God and you commit to that presupposition, but your idea of God, which is actually what you're presupposing, is false, the problem occurs when you try to criticize that idea, or when someone else tries to criticize that idea. Because you see, if it's presupposed, that means it's fundamental to everything else in your thinking. Then that means you can't get behind it, beside it, underneath it, in order to evaluate it or judge it to see whether or not it's the correct idea about God. So if you presuppose the triune God, but your theology of the Trinity is messed up, your idea of who God is erroneous, or your doctrine of Scripture or your perception of what Scripture is as an organism is erroneous, then of course everything following from that is going to be erroneous as well. So we want to be very careful about committing to certain presuppositions. And so I saw the value in not presupposing what would amount to conclusions in my own thinking. The existence of God, God as Trinity, the divine inspiration of the Holy Scriptures, and so on and so forth. Instead of presupposing conclusions like those, presupposing first principles like the laws of logic, the basic reliability of sense perception, the law of causality or the principle of causality, and then moving along with those presupposed, we might say, first principles in mind, coming to the correct conclusions in an orderly fashion, I found to be much more valuable. Rather than taking an idea that you have of something, God, let's say, and making it first, such that if that idea is flawed in any way, if it's wrong or erroneous or inaccurate, then in virtue of the fact that you presuppose it, you can't get behind it and judge it and discern it, because it's presupposed. If it's presupposed, you can't evaluate it at all, because otherwise it wouldn't be presupposed. So let's say I have an idea, I have the idea of God in my head, but it's a modalistic idea of God, but I'm presupposing it, right? If I say I'm presupposing it, then I can't judge it, because in order to judge it, I would have to presuppose something else or other things that are more fundamental than that idea in order to discern whether or not that idea of God is accurate. I hope that makes sense. Probably as clear as Arkansas mud at this point. But my main point here is to say that presuppositionalism, in my estimation, forces one to presuppose an idea. All right, it forces one to presuppose an idea. And that idea is creaturely, as you conceive of things and how you know things as a creature is creaturely. And so to presuppose that and be unwilling to judge it, discern it, to critique it or evaluate it, I think puts one in a very dangerous situation. And I think it's part of the reason why we're having some of the problems with theology proper that we are today. God bless you guys.